Chris Lowe, I hope you're having a great afternoon, sir. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
Hey, yeah, Ryan, having a great day. Thanks for having me.
The conversation just will not go away. You know, Chris, I thought today was going to be all about the NFL draft, and then I'd get up, and Nick Saban's on ESPN this morning. Your article that certainly grabbed our attention. I said, nope, it's not going away. This is the one, the conversation that keeps on giving. Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I think probably it's gonna continue on all the way up until the preseason camp, and I think it's the question that's going to reverberate around college football, Ryan, is who's it going to be? And I think the good news for Alabama and Alabama fans is that Nick Saban's proven that he can win with different styles of quarterbacks, different kinds of quarterbacks. He's had situations like this before where he's gone into a season or preseason camp where there wasn't a clear starter, and he's been able to sort it out. So, as I pointed out in the article, this is not his first rodeo. And in talking to several head coaches and defensive coordinators around the country, you know, most people agree that they would have handled this exactly the way he has and let this thing play out. Now, a little bit of a caveat in that nobody knew that Tua was going to get hurt, you know, the first day of spring ball and really not do much this spring, not play in the spring game. But no, I think this is something that's going to play out. And summer is a really important time for quarterbacks because that's when you are with your receivers pretty much every day. You're throwing to them, you're developing your chemistry, your continuity, where guys want the football. You know, it's that. For as long as I've been doing this, I can't ever remember an offensive coordinator or quarterback or any skilled player on offense who doesn't talk about the importance of summer, especially in the passing game, of getting that chemistry down. And so that'll be a big part of this. I think this race, this competition, we're going to call it, you know, for Tagovailoa and for Jalen Hurts.
You spoke to head coaches, and I love these type of articles because, you know, sometimes you get that coach talk, and especially when they go out in the public spotlight. But sometimes in private, you can ask those guys. They give you the quotes. You obviously do not disclose who they are, but you get more content. There's more meat and potatoes. And I highlighted multiple different quotes. You said, one of the guys said, there's no way you name a starter until fall camp. Even though you may think one of the guys or one of them is the guy, I'd say there's probably Tua right now, but you have to manage in the way and let those guys compete. And then you talk about the summer right there, talking about the guys, and you're not going to fool the players on that football team.
No, you're not. And they know the best guy. And yeah, a problem if you talk to receivers right now, you know, because of the way that Tua can spread the football around, the way he stretches the field vertically, you know, I'm sure they're probably in favor of him being a guy. But that doesn't mean that they don't have confidence or feel like Jalen Hurts can't get it done. Obviously, he's a different kind of quarterback. He's not been as consistent throwing the football from the pocket, and that's where he's got to get better at. And I think, you know, the kind of competitor that Jalen is, that's something he's going to work hard on. He understands for him to win a job, he's got to be a better passer from the pocket. But as another coach pointed out, and I think this is probably something that we all forget, fans, media. You know, we've seen Tua Tagovailoa. Granted, it was a huge fade, but we've only seen him in one situation there in the second half against Georgia. You know, he makes the great throw for the touchdown. He really gave Alabama a spark. But one game and one half doesn't make a season. It doesn't mean that you've arrived or you all of a sudden are anointed as the guy. Clearly, he had shown a bunch of talent in practice, and I talked to enough people in and around that program who knew he was the real deal. But you got to be able to do it over the course of the season, and we conveniently forget, Ryan, that he took the big sack. You know, he took that sack there, and if he doesn't come up with that throw and Alabama loses the game, you know what we're talking about there. We're all talking about, well, boy, he showed his inexperience and he took that sack. You can't take that sack in that situation. So being the guy and being the guy that everyone's preparing for and game planning for, and again, these are things that coaches I talked to pointed out, is much, much different than being a guy that comes in off the bench in the second half and bam, you know, you get it done then. So that's, you know, those are things to think about and consider. And certainly as Nick Saban and Mike Locksley, that staff break down this decision, those are all things they're going to be asking themselves.
Chris, with Alabama's direction on offense, it seems like that maybe they're wanting Jalen to do something that maybe he's not comfortable in doing. I don't know where they're going completely, but even on Saturday and it may have just been a scrimmage in A-Day, but it seemed like they were trying to get him to stay in the pocket, and that's really not who he is. And I know Nick Saban had the hot mic, had the take there, but are they trying to force him to be something that he's not?
Well, I wouldn't read too much into a spring game because sometimes spring games are set up to you want to see different things, or they're pretty vanilla. Everything's on television. You're not going to sell a whole lot. But no, I mean the thing that makes Jalen Hurts is his ability to create and improvise. He's a running back and a really good one who can throw the football. He's pretty good at keeping his eyes down the field. Now, the thing he did, and again, this is another coach that I talked to pointed out, I think the thing that he probably hurt himself with last year, maybe the year before too, is he was hesitant at times to pull the trigger, to turn the ball loose and try to get the ball in a window. Now, the good news there, Ryan, is he doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't throw interceptions. And Saban loves that about him. And the way Alabama wants to play, with the way their program is geared towards their defense and putting teams in bad positions and not putting their defense in bad positions, that goes in hand to hand with his philosophy. I mean, the complementary part of football at Alabama is still very real. And I think that's the thing we can't lose sight of. But to beat the best teams on your schedule, we'll go back to their loss to Clemson when they were not able to throw it down the field 2 years ago and really take advantage. That's where he's got to get better, is being able to, discern when you're going to pull the trigger and trying to get that ball in windows and not be as hesitant. And I think that's probably where Nick's coming from. And I can promise you, whatever was captured on that hot mic, Jalen's heard a lot tougher, sterner criticism for Nick Saban on the practice field than anything he heard on that hot mic. But yeah, he's not a prototypical pocket passer. He's got to get better in that area. But I think the beauty of Jalen Hurts is that he can hurt you in different ways. And then talking to defensive coordinators and other coaches, preparing for that is hard because you can't really prepare for it because he's so good at that, improvising and creating. And as the other guy pointed out that I talked to, a lot of teams around the country, Ryan, would love to have this problem. They love to be picking between these two guys that have won on big stages, two guys that have immense talent, and two guys that are competitors and aren't afraid to compete.
Chris, how do you think Nick Saban is going to manage it in fall camp? Because in some ways, I'm not saying that you have to be fair, but you need to give, I guess, one of these guys some notice because, we learned last week from Matt Hayes' article on the Bleacher Report, and I know that's a big colleague that you've known Matt for many, many years. As a matter of fact, I think I saw you retweeting it's how I found the article. But it's when I look back at the comment about the biggest free agent in college football or whatever, if Jalen is the backup quarterback, that he's not going to be in Tuscaloosa, how does Nick Saban manage it, and do you think he will wait until the very last minute that he possibly can to announce the guy?
He'll wait until he knows there's clear separation. Whether that's first scrimmage, the last scrimmage, 2 days before the opener, I can promise you, knowing Nick Saban as I do, he don't care what you think or I think, his father thinks, Tua's father, anybody. He's going to do what he feels like is best for the team. And a big part of making that decision, and Nick's told me this repeatedly when I've had these conversations with him over the years, who wins the football team? Who's the football team most comfortable with that when they go to the game, that they know that guy gives them the best chance to win? And when he figures that out, whether it's a scrimmage into the preseason, whether it's the last scrimmage, whether it's the week of the final game, that's when he's going to make the decision. I would be very, very surprised if he makes this decision early in preseason camp. And whatever happens from there happens. And if one of them decides they're going to transfer, whether it's Hurts or Tua, the one thing with Hurts is he hasn't redshirted, so he could actually, I think he's going to graduate in December, so he could actually play the season and then be a postgraduate transfer and be eligible right away. Now, he would lose a year of eligibility, so I'm not sure he would want to do that. My guess is, this isn't a guess, is if Hurts doesn't win the starting job, he will transfer before the season and then sit out and have 2 years to play. But again, if he wins the job, then that opens up a whole lot of other questions. But I don't see any way that Nick Saban is on anybody else's timetable but his own and the team's own. And that's, that ain't ever going to change.
Chris, when I was watching A-Day, I think the big thing that jumped out to us, and It seems like every year we fall into this trap when you look at the guys that will go from Alabama's defense from last year in the first couple of rounds of the NFL. Ronnie Harrison, Rashawn Evans, Minka Fitzpatrick, Ron Payne, Sean Hamilton. We could go on and on and on with players that will be drafted in the next few days. We always get sucked into this trap. We'll go, oh, this is the year. This is the year. And then you go out there and you look at that front seven and you go, well, maybe they have a chance to be better in some areas, maybe pass rush, than they have in previous years. It's amazing to go out and watch the way that they just reload in T-Town.
Well, I tell you, when I've been there and had a chance to watch them practice, and the best way I would answer that question is this way. I always like to go down and watch the defensive linemen work. You know, when I say the interior defensive linemen, the pass rushers. And I've been fortunate enough over the last couple of years to go a couple different times and watch them practice. So I'll go watch that position group practice. And at that time, and I'll be the first to admit, I don't know everybody's number, okay? I mean, I know a lot of them, but it's hard, and it's very difficult for me to watch them work and watch them move and come off the football and watch their power and strength and the way they play with leverage, all the things you're looking for in defensive linemen and pass rushers. To distinguish the ones versus the twos versus even the threes. You know, and that's a couple things. That's evaluation, that's recruiting, that's development, that's coaching, and that's creating the kind of competition on the practice field that few other teams in college football have been able to do in the last few years. And Alabama's mastered that. And they're able to get guys who feast on that competition. There was a great quote in Matt Hayes' article. I can't remember who it was from, where I think it was one of the offensive linemen. He said the great thing about this place is that competition brings out the best in everybody. And that's what's happened in Alabama. That's why they've been able to separate themselves, is that competition has really been the hallmark of their program, that competition on the practice field. And it's no different. Nick told me this when I was with him back in March or April, whenever it was. He said it's no different at the quarterback position, which means, you know, the cream's going to rise to the top.
Chris, I love the articles. The ESPN Insider is the article where you can go and read some of these coaches talking about opposing coaches breaking it down. Hurts versus Tua Tagovailoa, and then the article that we did not have time to discuss. Dear NFL, please do not overthink these productive college stars. It's no doubt a lot of fun. I mean, we're sitting down here covering this, and you know, we're talking about Minka Fitzpatrick, probably one of the greatest leaders I've ever covered. Barrett Jones would be in that conversation, 1 and 2, 1A, 1B. And we're hearing talk like Minka could slip down at number 10 or 11, and you're like, have you ever watched this guy play? I mean, it's like sometimes they overthink these things.
Yeah, they do, and all GMs do. And when I was with Dabo Sweeney this spring, that's the thing he said. You remember he stood on the table last year for John Watson and said, listen, if you pass on this guy, you're going to be sorry. And, you know, he didn't slip out of the first round, but he did drop into the first round. So, you know, I agree with you on Minka. Minka's a great football player, a great leader, just a guy that lifts everybody else around him. And you sit and talk to Saban about that Fitzpatrick, and, you know, he can't say enough good things about him, not only as a player, but as a competitor, as a leader. And Nick doesn't just randomly hand out those compliments unless he needs it. You know, he can play every position back there. You know, I think he's a guy that will play a long time in the NFL and be very productive. If he does slip past the top 10, somebody's going to get a great player and they're going to get a steal.